Hearing to order. This is being televised for the community as well, so if you're going to be addressing the board, please state your name and your address, please. You are going to be addressing any part of the members of the board. The procedure usually follows that we actually end up reading the application's format, and then from that point we take opinions. The board members will have certain questions of the applicant, and then we can open it up for discussion. Decisions aren't usually made until the end of the night, and then we make our decisions after all the hearings. If someone could shut that back door, that would be great. As far as just some general comments, tonight we're going to have 3 hearings. I'd like to ask the board members to review these 3 applicants and let me know if there's any conflicts of interest on any of them.
No.
No.
None? Hearing none? Joe?
No.
No? Okay. I am passing around the sheets for anybody that's in the room, so please fill out your name and address so that we've got the information on the hearings for each one of you. So the first one is going to be on the application of Keith Mondelli. I'd like the applicant to come up and please have a seat in the front, please. When you do address the board, I'd like you to then go to the microphone so that the public can also hear you. Once I'll give you the nod so you can go up and you can answer. On the application of Keith Mondelli of 54 Cape Road, Mendon, Mass. For a special permit pursuant to Section 2.3 of the zoning bylaw in relation to a 20,000 square foot plus or minus parcel of land located on the southeasterly intersection of Water Street and Prospect Street, known and numbered as 81 Prospect Street. The special permit is sought to be in the permit to conduct a used automotive sales on the subject lot. In reviewing the application from the applicant, see that we have the owner's signature as cooperation within the applicant, and then the questions that were asked of the applicant was to explain the reasons you assert that the special permit sought is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. The applicant states, prior to the zoning change in 2009, oh, this is the wrong file. I apologize. I got on top. Here's Keith's. Concerning the question that was asked from the applicant, explain the special, if it was sought in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw, prior Class 2 license to this property. Concerning the question, the proposed use of the premises will not create undue traffic congestion or pedestrian safety. The applicant states 2 exit points for safety, existing commercial use. Concerning the question, the proposed use of the premises will not cause harm to the neighborhood or create a nuisance or hazard affecting the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, the applicant basically indicates it's an existing automotive service. I'm looking for a comment from the planning board, which I don't see.
Yeah, take this. There you go.
Okay, there was not one in this one here. This came from this is to the address to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Planning Board reviewed the petition listed above at the regular scheduled meeting of May 21st and recommends the following. Favorable recommendation, see Town Planner letter. Town Planner Joseph Calagione states, dear Mr. Chairman, the applicant requests special permit approval to change from one non-conforming use to another on the subject property. The proposal is to change the existing Class 2 auto dealer's license to a new operator. The business is a long-standing non-conformity in the RA zone, and no additions or changes to the property are proposed. The site plan submitted with this application is as approved by the Planning Board in 2007. The plan provides for required off-street parking for all users, as well as specifically defined outdoor area for vehicle sales display as well. Based on this plan, the site will accommodate display of 15 vehicles within the area so designated. I therefore recommend a favorable report forward to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the outdoor display area for used vehicles shall be limited to 15 vehicles. Following the issue of a special permit by the ZBA, site plan approval will be required by the planning board. With that, sir, I'd like you to take the microphone and give us an idea of what you're trying to do.
Good evening. My name is Keith Monley. I live in Mendon, Massachusetts. I do have an existing car license in Mendon, and I'm just trying to move my dealership to Milford. I don't think it will be any big changes as far as the site sits right now. I think everything will still remain the same. It's just a matter of moving my address.
Okay, let me turn questions over to the board members. By the way, all 5 board members have been on this hearing because that's all we have. So, John, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Mary?
Nothing right now.
Joe?
Yes, this is for 15 used cars,
Yes, sir.
and it shows an area here, it says used car display area. Will they be limited to that?
Limited to 15?
Yes.
I think so, yes.
I noticed they don't show any, you see where it shows Sprint Lube sign?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen automobiles parked behind that on display.
As we speak,
Yes,
well, it is existing. The owner do have a license there right now. I don't know exactly what he's doing and what he has there as we speak. I'm just trying to switch over, you know, like from his ownership to mine.
does he also have a license for what, 15 automobiles?
I don't know exactly what his license are entail.
All right,
Right.
yeah.
So what you're indicating to this board is currently, as far as you know, there's a 15-car use license already approved for this site.
Right, that's as far as I know, yes.
So any decision this board makes will eliminate that license
Right,
to be granted to the new applicant,
absolutely.
because the license does not transfer with the property, it transfers with the applicant.
And that's why I'm applying, yes.
What's in my file does not designate the area of where these cars are displayed from a parking perspective. It just says used car display area. So you're going to have to go back to the planning board to be able to have a plan engineered out to show where these cars are being displayed.
Not a problem.
Currently, do you have more than 15 cars on the site right now for display?
Not there yet, so I don't know exactly what he has for sale or for repair. There's another business there as we speak, so it's not just a used car dealership.
I understand that.
Right, so whatever's for
Some of
sale.
us went by there tonight, and it looks like there's an awful lot of cars already there.
Okay,
So the question becomes whether or not those are all for sale currently.
I don't know for sure, no, I can't
So
say.
have you started this process here yet? Have you started at the new location yet?
No, I have nothing there, no,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
Now, are you going to be running the Sprint Lube, or you're just there for the,
Used cars,
okay, and there's going to be someone else that's going to be
yes,
doing the oil changes and whatever, car
Absolutely.
repairs or whatever?
yes, ma'am.
All right.
Anybody from the audience would like to be heard? If not, you have the last word before the close of hearing and take it under advisement.
I want to say thank you very much for taking it on advisement.
Okay, great. Thank you. If you want to hang around to the end of the meeting and have our answer, you'll get to have it, okay? Thank you. Okay. 7:20. We've got, it's actually 7:10, which is well. Moving along. So no one else came in? Did everybody sign this?
Yeah, Joe just came in.
Okay. We're going to pass around, on each hearing, we're going to be passing around, so we'd like everyone to sign on each one that we give you, so that we know that who's in attendance for each one. Thank you. To the next hearing. Okay, that being after 7:10, This is on the application of Peter Antinarelli. I'm sorry, it's difficult. P.O. Box 341, Milford, Mass., for a variance from the provisions of Section 2.4 and 2.5 of the zoning bylaw in relation to a 9,177 square foot parcel, more or less, located on the northwesterly side of Main Street, known and numbered as 279 Main Street. Variance release is sought in order to permit the petitioner to reestablish a single-family residential structure upon the subject lot, notwithstanding non-compliance with certain dimensional requirements of the zoning bylaw. Building commissioner is here. Okay. Upon the application, the question concerning, has a permit been refused? The answer, of course, was no. What section of the zoning bylaw do you wish to be varied? Section 2.5, intensity of use provisions as follows. Single-family residential structures are permitted within this neighborhood commercial CB zoning, provided they are constructed so as to comply with requirements of the RA district. The street frontage requirement in the RA district is 80 feet. The subject premises were the location of a single-family residence which was destroyed by fire many years ago. A predecessor entitled to the applicant, in fact, installed a concrete foundation on the premises in the same location as the former residence. The present variance is sought to permit the construction of a single-family residential upon the premises in the same location as the former residential structure, which was destroyed by fire 5 years ago. Premises possesses slightly less than a 50% street of frontage on Main Street and 448.89 feet, which is less than the 80% feet of frontage which would be applicable to the premises under the Section 2.5 of the bylaw. No other variance is needed or sought at this particular petition. Concerning the question of what circumstances exist relating to the soil conditions, shape, and topography of the subject premises, which do not generally affect other land in the zoning district as described above, the subject premises consist of a lot with deep and narrow, approximately 190 feet deep and 48 feet wide. The premises had formerly been the site of a single-family residence for many years, which was totally destroyed by fire 5 years ago. The lots in the immediate vicinity are built upon, and no land is otherwise available to remedy the street frontage deficiency that affects them. Upon the question if the variance was not granted, what hardship would be caused by the circumstances described? The applicant states the denial of requested relief would prevent the utilization of the premises as they have been utilized for many years and would make the premises visually unusable for the residential purposes. Concerning the question by the applicant state, would you feel the grant of the variance will cause substantial detriment to the public good? The applicant states the petition seeks a variance from the street frontage requirement to construct a modest residence in the premises nearly identical to size in the residence which was located therefore many years ago. The public good, in fact, will be enhanced by the restoration of the property to its functionality. Concerning the letter from the planning board reviewed the petition listed above at its regular scheduled meeting of June 4th and recommends the following, which is a favorable recommendation. From the Chairman of the Planning Board, the applicant requests a variance to allow the construction of a single-family dwelling on the subject property. The variance is necessary due to the standard frontage of 48.89 and 80 of the frontage requirement is required. The 9,100 square foot lot exceeds the minimum 8,000 square foot lot area requirement. In addition, the proposed house will be located so as to exceed all minimum setback requirements. The existing foundation had been constructed by a previous owner several years ago after the original house was destroyed by fire. Therefore, they do recommend a favorable report be sent to this ZBA board. With that, Attorney Petnari, I will leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ernie Petnari. I'm a lawyer here in Milford. My office is located at 12 Main Street. I'm here tonight with Mr. Antinarelli, who's seated to my immediate right. He's the owner of the property that's located at 279 Main Street. I think you've read in the application and in the recommendation from the planning board the history as it pertains to the lot in question. I also tonight have brought a copy of the GIS photograph that's available on the Town of Milford website. It will give you a pretty good picture of three things. It'll identify where the lot is. The second thing it does very, very clearly is it shows the size and shape of the lot and how long and narrow it is. And finally, the third thing it does is it gives you an idea in terms of the general residential character of the neighborhood in that section of Main Street. We're here tonight only because two things happened. The fire destroyed the house that had existed there, and several years, maybe 100 years before that, these lots were laid out in such a way as to only have 48 feet of frontage on Main Street. As is mentioned in the application, and as is obvious from the GIS photograph and from this plan, the buildings to the north and south are situated in such a way as to be within immediate proximity to the lot lines. What Mr. Antinarelli proposes to do is to restore these premises to their pre-fire, pre-zoning condition, and that is to restore a residence to the structure, to the foundation, which is currently constructed on the property. A predecessor entitled had constructed the foundation for reasons only known to them. They never pursued construction, and Mr. Antinarelli bought the property in its current condition. We submit that the restoration of the property is a good thing from the town's perspective. Currently, it's in substandard condition. It will allow the neighborhood to experience some restoration. We submit that the variance that's requested is a reasonable one because this lot had been long-standing residentially used in its exactly same configuration as it presently exists. And we finally submit that to deny the variance would be to effectuate a hardship upon the owner of this lot, that being that it would make the residential use of this property impossible. Because if we don't get the variance, the applicable standards that are applicable in the neighborhood commercial CB zone are the RA standards, and this lot can never be 80 feet wide. So for all of those reasons, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we submit that it's a reasonable request for the issuance of the variance. Mr. Antinarelli's here if you have any questions that I can't answer, and we would rest on that.
Great, thank you. Board members, any comments, questions?
No, nothing.
John?
No.
Brian?
This would be for single-family use only, not multifamily?
Yes, yeah, and it's, with the 700 square feet, it couldn't fit under the new duplex bylaw.
It could or couldn't?
Could not.
Joe?
Questions?
So you're going to have to design the architecturals to be able to fit the foundation, of course. Or
Again,
is-
we believe so, yes. In fact, Mr. Erickson's here tonight. I'm not sure that question has been disposed of, but we're hopeful that the foundation is suitable for use, and that's something that Mr. Erickson and Mr. Antinarelli will review.
John, you have any comments?
No, no comments. We'd have to review the condition of the existing foundation.
Okay. That currently is exposed, is it backfilled?
Yes.
It's backfilled.
Two sides of it are backfilled, the other two are exposed.
The side you can see from the street are backfilled.
Just in case it's something that the board is disposed to do, if that is not a usable foundation, it is his intention and a condition in the variance that says it would have to be built in such a way to observe all dimensional and setback requirements except frontage is perfectly acceptable. And I don't know if anybody doesn't know, but the old Sherman Pontiac is right here. And there's a residential structure here. This is vacant now with the foundation, residence all the way up.
I don't see a driveway planned on this. I would assume it's going to go to the side of the foundation?
There is an existing drive. There's an existing curb cut.
There is an existing curb cut?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
And
you,
again, no changes are proposed in that.
okay, so you'll use the existing curb cut probably,
I believe
or
that's...
whatever will work?
I believe that's inevitable, to be
Yeah,
honest,
okay,
yes.
good. Anyone from the audience care to be heard?
Can we see a copy of the plot plan?
Come on up.
Right here.
How are you?
So the driveway will be from Main Street, not Main Street?
Correct.
That's all I want to know.
Great,
It's like
okay.
a common one between both of them.
No, but his question is whether it would go across maybe slip. and the
Oh,
answer
no,
is
you
no.
don't.
It's really
Just use the one that's there now.
The access would be Main Street.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Comments? You have the last word before we close the hearing. Take it under advisement.
Again, I believe this is a request which fits in with the overall revitalization of the community in the downtown area. It's a restoration of a condition which we believe has existed in Milford certainly longer than 50 years and probably close to 100. And it eliminates what is right now less than desirable conditions on that lot and for the neighbors. So we think that, in all sincerity, this is a variance that is both reasonable.
Great. Okay, thank you. We'll close the hearing. Okay, this goes in this file, by the way. On this next hearing, we're going to pass around again the attendance form. If you've already signed it because you're here for the previous hearing, and your name's on the sheet, you don't need to sign it again. Okay, on this panel, all 5 board members present. And the building inspector is present. Okay, that being after 7:15, this is on the application of Joseph Shea. Would the applicants please come on up to the front as I read this? It's on the application of Joseph F. Shea, Jr., individually as trustee in the Milford Stone Company at 421 East Main Street, Milford, for relief under the Milford zoning bylaw in relation to the premises of 420 East Main Street in Milford, shown as Assessor Sheet 30, is Lot 4. The applicant appeals the decision and order of the Milford Building Commissioner dated May 2nd, 2013, requiring cessation of earth removal and granite quarrying activity upon the premises. The petitioner also seeks alternative relief in the form of a special permit and/or an amended to an existing special permit pursuant to sections 3.1 and 3.3 of the zoning bylaw or other applicable provisions, seeking authorization to continue operations for granite quarrying the property as was authorized by the Zoning Board of Appeals under a decision dated August 13, 2002, with amendment conditions as necessary. Copy of the above diagrams, of course, are on file with the town clerk's office. Yes, do me a favor, if you've got, you fellas, please put them on silent. That would help. Mr. White. Okay, during the application process, the question was asked, explain the reasons that you assert that the special permit sought is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. The applicant states, prior to a zoning change in 2009, the use of the land for quarrying was a permitted use. Quarrying is still allowed in the IA, IB, and IC zones. Pre-existing uses can be expanded and continued. Concerning the question from the applicant, proposed the use of the premises will not create undue traffic congestion or impair pedestrian safety. The applicant states the use has been ongoing for quite some time and traffic congestion or impair generated from the site is minimal, as the quarried material is generally being stockpiled for future use at the site. Some material sold, but there is less than 5 trucks per day. Concerning the question of the applicant, the proposed use of the premises will not cause harm to the neighborhood or create a nuisance or hazard affecting the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The applicant states the quarrying activity is taking place primarily to prepare the site for future development. Very little traffic is generated, and the day-to-day operations are primarily confined to the areas that are surrounded by woods and highways. With that, I'll take a look at the couple of letters that are in here. Set of communications from town council. Concerning the letter to the zoning board, the planning board reviewed the petition listed above at regular scheduled meeting of June 4th and recommends the following. Recommends to uphold the building commissioner's stop work order, see town planner letter. Town planner letter. The applicant is appealing a building commissioner's stop order issue on 5/2/13 for the quarrying, processing, and earth removal operation at the subject premises. The operation was originally granted a special permit by the ZBA in 2002 for a period of 24 months. not only was the decision not recorded, it was not renewed within 24-month time period. The entire property was rezoned to BP Business Park in 2009. Both earth removal and quarrying are prohibited uses in the BP zone. Earth removal is defined in the zoning bylaw as extraction of sand, gravel, topsoil, or other earth for sale or for use at the site removed from the place of extraction, exclusive of the grading of a lot preparatory to the construction of a building for which a building permit has been issued, or the grading of these streets in accordance with the approved definitive plan. Granite quarrying is defined as the removal of dimensional stone, but not removal of stone for crushing or process use. The applicant failed to comply with the special requirements of the ZBL sections 3.7.3.1, 3.7.3.3, and 3.7.3.4 as enumerated in the special permit decision. Specifically, 3.7.3.1 provides removal should not take place on any grade less than 1 foot above the grade level or adjacent to a street or way or below a level that would reasonably be considered a desirable grade for later development in the area or below the grade specified on the plan accompanying the permit application. No grading plan was submitted to indicate compliance with the section. Section 3.7.3.3 provides provisions shall be made for safe drainage of water and for prevention of wind and water erosion carrying material to adjoining properties. No drainage or erosion plan was ever submitted to indicate provisions of this requirement. Again, continuing on section 3.7.3.4 provides soil should not be disturbed within 100 feet of the boundaries of the premises, excepting at the conclusion of the operations if required in order to improve the overall grading. No plans were ever submitted to indicate compliance with this section, and aerial photography shows encroachment into the required 100-foot setback. Due to the lack of recording of the decision and the continued non-compliance by failing to renew, the operation has actually been in violation of the special permit and the zoning bylaw from the beginning, and therefore cannot be considered legal non-conforming. A new special permit cannot be granted for either earth removal or quarrying as they are prohibited by the BP zone. Further, to do so would constitute a use variance, and use variances are not allowed by the zoning bylaw. Therefore, I recommend to the building commissioner the stop order be withheld. In addition to that, Town Council Jerry Moody has issued the zoning board some clarity on what's been going on and some of the options. We'll listen to the applicant, and then at that point we can make a decision whether to extend, amend, modify, or deny the special permit. In the event it gets denied, then the building commissioner's decision would stand. If it gets amended, then the building commissioners that process would be lifted, and there would be no action necessary to take forward. With that, Attorney Antonellis, I turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Joseph Antonellis. I'm an attorney. My office is here in Milford at 288 Main Street. With me tonight is Joseph Shea, who is the principal of Milford Stone and trustee of SFA Realty Trust. We obviously have a lot of work to do tonight, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be as precise as I can. You recognize that we have filed 2 applications. One was the necessity of filing an appeal to Mr. Erickson's decision to the issuance of the cease and desist order, which we filed, and at the same time we filed for an amended or modified special permit. And there's reasons for all of this to go this 2-pronged approach, and I think I'd like to handle it as we go to collectively. I think that's the best way to go. I apologize that I don't have multiple plans, but this is the best plan we have. We have some other ones that have too much to read, but the important thing I'd like to point out is this is the existing zone line between the industrial A zone and the residential zone. Okay, and up until the rezoning of this to the new business park zone, which was done at the request of the planning board, not at the request of my client, okay, that was done obviously for other issues that are facing the town of Milford relative to the development of additional business parks in other areas. Up until that point, the industrial land that was subject to the special permit never actually required a special permit because the Milford zoning bylaw has a P next to the issue of quarrying. And when you have a P, it's a permitted activity that is not, where it is not necessary for either site plan review, special permit, or variance. So all of the activity that has taken place in and within the industrial zone is an activity that was not only allowed in the industrial zone, in this one, it was allowed in industrial A, B, and C, and as we all know, as part of the heritage of the town of Milford, we are a quarry town. So any and all activity that has taken place in the industrial zone up until the date of the zoning change, we believe was a legal existing operation that is now a pre-existing legal operation, notwithstanding any of the comments that were made by the town planner relative to the special permit. So I'm asking you again to look at this section, which is the industrial land. It is our position, and this is part of why I appealed Mr. Erickson's decision, is that any and all quarrying activity that took place in the industrial zone was a legal pre-existing use. Because again, the letter P is in your zoning bylaw and has been for as long as I've been involved with zoning here in Milford. So again, we're just taking that. Now the second part of the project, as you'll see above to the east of this line, is in fact the residential zone. And the special permit that you referenced, Mr. Chairman, was actually in place for the purpose of having the activity take place by and between both parcels of property. Why was the permit not renewed? I have a very simple answer for you. I don't know. Mr. Shea at the time had multiple partners. I'm going to say to you that perhaps one of them thought was taking care of it. I don't know. I don't have an answer for it. I cannot tell you why it was not renewed. What I can tell you is that all of the activity that has taken place on that site since then has been done in a manner, if you were to take a view of this site, where all of the things that you say no plans were submitted for have in fact occurred. It has been a very well-maintained site in that regard. There are retention ponds that were built along the line to hold all the water. There has been an earthen berm that was built along Route 16 to hold back dust. There have been other provisions that have been taken place on both parcels of property to ensure the safety of all of the people in the area. All of the work that has taken place on the site has been regulated under a permit from the United States Mining Company, so that all the proper insurances have been in place, all of the proper protocol relative to the cuts and fills that take place in a quarry. And quarrying is different now than it was when our forefathers were doing it here in town. But all of the activities that have taken place in a reasonable and appropriate fashion under the auspices or theory on Mr. Shea's part that he was operating under a special permit that was still in existence. Again, mea culpa. I understand that. I don't have a reasonable explanation for you other than it sat in a file and he continued to go do what he does best, which is to create dimensional stone. Now, again, in the letter, Mr. Duncan, in his response to the board, speaks specifically about the earth removal bylaw in the town of Milford. And I would grant to you that if we were in the earth removal business, then all of the things that are mentioned in the earth removal bylaw are important to us. But the earth removal bylaw in Milford deals with removing earth, sand, peat, moss, loam. It's in the definition. And what we're doing here is taking stone that is primarily dimensional stone. And just to give you an idea, this is a rebuilding of part of a harbor in Boston. And all of the stone that's shown in that seawall is dimensional stone that was brought to Boston from the Milford site. This is primarily what Mr. Shea likes to do. He likes to take that kind of stone and he is selling it to a Cashman Construction who is rebuilding most of the harbor areas in Boston. And in fact, he has contracts pending for additional large stone. What happens is, in today's quarrying, is that unlike in the past where you would continue to cut deep holes into the ground, go deeper and deeper, and the walls get in, then we have the issue where they're always pumping water out. Today, it's much more selective in nature in how it's done, where you find the best stone to take, you go in and expose the earth around it, and either break it up with a hammer so that you get large parcels which are then fabricated, or you obviously blast it. And as we speak to the blasting, I can also tell you that each and every blast that's taken place on the property has taken place under a proper license issued with the fire department and or any other regulatory agency that's been involved. So the stone is taken out and it is fairly well dimensionalized into those large riprap pieces, I think we'd call it. We're not, I will tell you that as it relates to dimensional stone, he's not cutting dimensional stone there as the prior quarries in Milford did. We're not making the facades for the Boston Public Library. We're not making the base of the Lafayette Monument in Paris, France. We're not making the pieces for the Irish Round Tower in Milford. We're not making the blocks for the buildings from pink granite. We are making large parcels of stone that are granite, that are certainly tested. And again, I have information that his stone is tested on a regular basis as it relates to its porousness, its density, its ability to withstand impact, all of which is required in the types of jobs that are being done. What you then have on is that, and you'll see these notes on the plan, these were all, and I wasn't at the zoning board when the special permit was granted, but I have been told that all of these notes were written on the plan back in 2002 for the purpose of explaining what's being done. And in and within it are notes about processing the remainder material. I'm sure, again, having grown up in Milford, that many of you have been to the quarries, and you'll note that you'll see large stones that are just piled up on top of each other, especially I think of the one up off of Purchase Street called Claire's Quarry, where if you walk into the woods up there, you'll see all these stones that are almost built into a pyramid, and these were all left there. And the reason they were not moved or used is because they were improperly cut or improperly sized, and they became quote-unquote waste. Well, the idea now under quarrying is not necessarily to create that kind of waste, but rather to process the material, because the issue is not to leave a hole in the ground like Claire's or like Haskell's or like Norcross, which are water, or the Leisure Hour Club, but rather to take the excess material and to process it by way of some form of crushing activity, and then to use it to fill back into the hole. So Joe will go down with a piece of equipment. They'll find a spot, and you'll see if I show you the topo, or if you choose to take a walk and take a view, as you very well may in this process, you'll see that there are certain areas where the stone is going to be more easy to get. They'll go in, take it, disturb it, and then what they'll do is they'll take the additional material, most of which is sandy, and put it back in to try and level it off to get ready for future development. The intention for this site, notwithstanding what people may think, relative to its future, is that Mr. Shea would like to develop it as he goes into an industrial park at that point, and there's a significant amount of work. So to the extent that it was rezoned and the residential area was rezoned, we were glad to have that happen. So that's the process that takes place there. And again, I can't stand here to you and give you some convoluted explanation as to what happened with the non-recording and the non-renewal of the special permit. All I can tell you is that I believe that the operation at the site throughout the last 7 or 8 years has been in accord with the terms and provisions of that special permit, and that what you do, if you were to take a view, you will see that that's in fact the case. You'll see the detention ponds, you'll see the areas that have been taken care of. In addition, I think you know that we are burdened by a significant Massachusetts electric and national grid easement. Okay, the intention of the owner of the property, and he has the right under his easement, is to take those power lines down and put them under the ground. Okay, and part of what he's doing here in this process is to try and get the land in a shape and to a topographical situation where in fact those power lines can come down, be buried under the ground, and again the material that will be taken out in the cuts will be sold as dimensional material in the granite processing part. And again, I make the distinction here between the industrial and residential zone for the purpose of saving my argument and saving, I believe, the right, notwithstanding whatever happened with the special permit, that this was a lawful pre-existing use, a use that's been allowed in the town of Milford, and that this rezoning only took place in 2012. So I think that gives you an overview of how we got there. Again, I understand that, Mr. Erickson received a complaint about perhaps some early operations, and to the extent that there are some days when maybe somebody came into work early because they had to leave for a doctor's appointment or to go see their son play baseball. Again, we can't deny that. That perhaps has happened, and to the extent that that has caused a problem for anybody, then, we can assert through a amended permit with tightened conditions that won't happen again. Again, I think the property is very well maintained. You'll note that it is blocked off from public access on a regular basis. There is no ability for the general public to get up into this property, to climb around on the piles that are sometimes there because as the material is being processed. Mr. Shea is on site on a regular basis and has indicated to me that under the old permit, I think that the hours of operation are acceptable to him. He could tell you that there would be no Saturday operations. He would like to be able to maintain his vehicles on a Saturday at some point on reasonable hours, but does not anticipate that he would be out there blasting or doing any other activity on Saturdays. I recognize that you have a significant audience here tonight, and I recognize that the chair in this board respects the residents in the town of Milford and will afford them ample opportunity to speak. So to the extent that I can provide answers along the way, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I will. At that point, I will obviously, at this point, Mr. Chairman, if you have specific questions, I'm here to answer them. And we can take it from there. I feel strongly, again, that the activity in the industrial zone is a pre-existing conforming use that all along has been allowed, that was no necessity of a permit, notwithstanding the issuance of the special permit for the combined residential parcel. I would also note that at this point, we don't have any residential parcel here. We have it now all being business park. Again, the anticipation is that this development is going to be a development of business-oriented offices or pad sites, and to the extent that we have to move that in that direction sooner than we wanted, then there are other ways to get that done. But again, we believe that the best way to manage this site is to continue to do it in that shape, manner, and form. I will also say that Mr. Shea does own some of the older residences along here. Again, when he went into this business, he was smart enough to try and protect his property. Again, again, we have, zoning is a difficult thing. We have different zones that come together in different places. This is a logical industrial zone. It's right along an interstate highway, and it's accessed by a state roadway. It's not a town roadway in the sense that we're off on Purchase Street, we're on Route 16, and we believe that the truck traffic that comes in and out of there is minimal as it relates to what other could happen. Again, we could have warehouses in here and other kinds of development that would be putting significantly more traffic out there a lot sooner. Our intention is to go about this slowly, to try and find the appropriate uses for this. I will also tell you, Mr. Shea will tell you that he has sold gravel from this site because at sometimes there's so much excess material that he has sold gravel, and most of the gravel that's in the Milford Rail Trail was mined on this site. He made it available to contractors in town. I can also tell you that he has allowed the town of Milford over the time to use portions of this site to store material when the town of Milford has been involved in its own projects. I think he's been a good neighbor in that regard, and again, I recognize that we have residences in the area and that sometimes there's going to be some conflict. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn the meeting back to you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Very long and good presentation. Okay, John, I'll open it up to the board first for questions, and I'll open it up to the audience. John?
John, was the main reason for the stoppage due to the lack of permitting, or was there some part of the operation that you were concerned about?
No, I wasn't concerned about the operation in and of itself, but when I got the complaint, I looked at the history on the, I looked at the zoning of it, looked at the history with the special permit, found that it expired, and just made my decision based on that. The special permit had expired when I assumed that it would have been
Okay.
later than it hadn't been.
Okay.
No, I'm all set. I was going to ask the same thing.
Ryan?
Has town council been asked or offered an opinion as to whether the front portion of the property is pre-existing non-conforming?
I have not asked him a specific opinion. I've not asked an opinion of Mr. Moody that. I have discussed with Mr. Moody what uses were allowed in the industrial zone at the time. And I think the bylaw in that regard speaks for itself. The industrial A, B, and C zones allow quarrying.
No, Mr. Chairman, I have his opinion. He
I
doesn't-
have
he doesn't
not
address
seen
the
his letter.
question.
Excuse me, I apologize for interrupting. I didn't mean to interrupt. I have not seen his letter. So.
Okay.
Thank
He
you.
he doesn't address it as an issue, just.
Yeah, I did discuss the issue with him. Joe?
No questions right now.
I have a couple of questions. Currently, right now, the elevation changes and topos that you're following, is there high ledge similar to the target that was done on Fortune Boulevard where we had a blast about 30 feet high up there? And is there geotech testing that has to be done as well for compaction and backfills, or you're basically backfilling with strong rock?
Joe, you want to answer that? This is Joe Shea. Joe knows a lot more about rock than I do. Hopefully, I know a little bit more about the law than he does. But,
Yeah, well, basically, I got spots where, obviously the utilities are 8 feet below Route 16. So, but there's actually no room. So when you do a 10-foot, if you drill and blast 10 feet, 15 feet comes out of the ground. So what happens is you don't have any room. It had to be done. I've taken basically about a 50-foot cut out of about 5 acres. And to get down to road grade, there's probably another between 19 and 23 feet. So on the top, you get the cap rock, and you don't know where you get the seams in the rock. So the cap rock is the big stuff, and then underneath you'll have like wall stone stuff, or stuff that's used for stone veneers, and then you'll have like base product at the bottom. So anything that's like bigger than 18 inch, the worst thing to do is, the smaller it is, the more you've worked it, and the less it's worth. The granite's worth the most in its original state, biggest state, but you get seams everywhere. There's spots on the property where I can cut perfect blocks, but where there's seams and I had to make room going in there, I could make wall stone, and sometimes they move a lot of wall stone, other times you don't, and then the stone veneers, and then the blocks. So then what you do is to reestablish new natural ground so that you have a base. I would crush all the base material, but I take it down in lifts. So I work the property from the back to the front. Then I have enough room to work from the side to come in at another angle. So you have no choice, because if you keep going, pulling out stone, where it expands by 1/3, it doesn't take long before you have no room.
Okay.
And I think relative to the height, still at the street level, we're 19 to 20 feet above Route 16 now. So we're way above. I know that one of the comments is about 1 foot above reasonable grade level. We're 19 feet above reasonable grade level on Route 16.
Well, when Fortune Boulevard was developed, there was probably 30 feet.
Correct.
There was ledge up there, and it did. It took a while to get that processed. I have a question. I understand the process of the special permit. Clearly, that was granted by this board and by the town going back years ago. I understand having multiple partners, that sometimes someone's supposed to do something and didn't do the other because it wasn't filed accordingly. You currently have operating hours from 8 to 5. Talk to me about how you address dust. And as you can see, with the residents here, there's new developments all over the place from the residential side. And you'll probably get some questions from them, but is there a water truck to control dust? Does the fire chief get notified when this blasting process is going on? Does he have to witness that? And I'm asking you only.
Go ahead, Joe. Like I said, I got myself under the jurisdiction of the federal government, the Minor Safety Hazard Association, and they come up twice a year and they'll do dust suppression to make sure, because they're worried about the guys working there.
Yeah.
And so they'll test the air. They want us to be crushing or drilling, doing something in different conditions, and everything from safety on equipment to dust, noise. They test the noise, the vibration. you know, every step of the way. So I've just been under the jurisdiction of them, because they have, you know, all their rules that you have to follow, or you'll get shut down by them.
Okay, I guess then the next question is, does the fire chief get notified when you're ready to do a blast?
But yeah, they come out every time.
They do?
Every
Do they witness it?
Yes, they have to be on site when we blast.
Okay,
Every
great.
time.
That was a quick question.
Mr. Shea doesn't blast himself, he has an independent contractor that does that,
Correct. Okay, thank you.
as most of the people would.
Okay. All right, with that, if anybody has a question, you're going to address it through the board, through the chairman. Stand, give your name, your address, and then you'll address the question through me, and I'm sure that the attorney or the applicant can answer any questions. Go ahead, sir.
As you all know now, I'm Mr. White. I live at 19 Zane. I have several questions. The first one is, since they have not been in compliance for years, isn't this now a new application? They don't have an application. They have nothing. They're not operating legally. So should this not be treated as a new application, which means the cease and desist should still be in place? That's my first question. And I have a follow-on.
Okay, I'll answer your question once I have the next one. Yes, next.
Jeff Howard, 23 Zane. Interesting presentation, but there's a couple of matters that I think I and many of my neighbors would take exception to in the information that was presented. Some of the comments about the bylaws and the requirements of the permits, talk about the health, safety and general well-being of the public. Mr. Arpino can probably comment further as he's been in touch with the federal government, the mine and safety health, and their jurisdiction in that environment seems to be focused solely on any health or injury potential that takes place in the mining operation itself. We're actually told that, you know, they're there to say if a rock pops out of a mine during a blast and hits somebody on site, that's what their responsibility is, and they've completely abdicated any responsibility for anything going on outside of the physical mine property. Our issues on Zane Circle have to do with the health, safety, and well-being of the people that are in immediate proximity, and this is primarily focused around the blasting. Okay, I haven't heard any comments from people around excessive truck traffic, around dust, appropriate questions, appropriate conversation, but we have roughly 50 homes that are occupied in that neighborhood right now. The blasting is a continual problem. It is not an early morning problem, as was stated might be the case. My home is a full quarter mile from the blast site, a minimum quarter mile from the blast site as the crow flies. And when they blast, my house shakes. Many of us have extensive photographic evidence of damage that has been caused to the insides of our homes purely since the time that this blasting has been taking place. The intensity and the frequency of the blasting has continued to escalate over the course of the last year. The last time that I was home and heard one, I was sitting in the back of my house, and not only did my house shake, my house creaked. This is not a new home. This home was built, as you well know, Mr. Consigli, was built 8 years ago. Long since stopped settling, and I have extensive damage to my home. We have many young children and pets in the neighborhood that are scared to death because of the blasting that's been going on. So I would contend that the health, safety, and well-being of the public is not being adequately addressed in these matters. There's been many people, we've been in correspondence with Mr. Villani to get his counsel as to how we can work with the town to address these matters. That is one of the things, I'm sure other people as well, that led to the cease and desist order.
Okay.
One more matter, there's a reference to, safe drainage of water. Anybody that's driven down Route 16 in that area after a heavy rainstorm and seen, even with the riprap that's been placed along the front of the property on Route 16, as recently as a few days ago, there is continual outflow coming directly from that property, water and mud sweeping down onto Route 16 directly into the traffic lanes. So they've made a good faith effort perhaps to address some of that through the grading and the riprap that's gone around the front of the property, but it is still an ongoing problem, both in the warm weather and with ice creation in the winter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I continue, I want to be able to read this letter into the notes because it was addressed to this board concerning not only the cease and desist, but also the options that we may or may not have. So this came from Town Council Jerry Moody. Dear Mr. Consigli, as you know, your board has before two applications from Joe Shea. One appeals an order of the building commissioner requiring cessation of earth removal and granite quarrying activities on the premises, while the other seeks relief in the form of a special permit and/or an amendment to an existing special permit to, in essence, allow the activity to continue on this site. For purposes of efficiency, we combined this into one proceeding, which is scheduled for 7:15 at this office. He regretfully is unable to attend this meeting and wanted to give the board the memorandum as an outline as approaches that could be taken. The essential facts that he does not believe will be in great dispute. Back in 2002, the property for zoning purposes was in a zone which was split between residential C, RC zoning district, and highway industrial IB zoning district. As we stated in the 2002 decision of the board, granite quarrying was permitted as of right in the IB districts, but only by special permit in the residential C district. The board authorized the sought after special permit relief to permit granite quarrying on the 51-acre parcel subject to several conditions in the terms of operations. Among the conditions were the requirements of those sections that were compiled, and those were made specifically available to the special permit. A specific condition number 3 was placed upon the decision, which states as follows: the special permit will expire 24 months from the date of its filing with the clerk. Inherent with the above condition would be the opportunity for the applicant to reapply before the expiration to seek renewal of the special permit, with or without further conditions as to time. As I understand it, and as the building commissioner found out in his investigation, no special permit extended to 24-month period was ever granted or ever even sought. In addition, it was apparently discovered that the special permit itself was never recorded at the Worcester Registry of Deeds, as would have been required for its being effective. In the interim, the entire area was rezoned, as I understand it, to become part of the business park BP zoning district. It would appear, upon review from a distance, without the benefit of whatever evidence the board would receive, that the building commission was in all aspects correct in his issuance of a stop work order in that special permit issued in '02. The effectiveness, which could have been in doubt because of the lack of recording, had in any event expired by its term. There would be no basis to view the activity with the portion of the site formerly zoned as RC as non-conforming. It must be questionable as to whether or not within the former IB portion the activity could be viewed as non-conforming if there was not compliance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw applicable even as of right quarries pursuant to section 3.7 of the bylaw at the time the work began. In the broadest sense, among the two possible results that could flow from the decision-making by your board, after hearing all the facts and argues pros and cons, would be a decision which effectively causes a cessation of activity. This would be in the form of a denial of any special permit relief and a finding that the building commissioner's analysis was correct and that there is no nonconformity that would apply to the site. If that is to be the finding and a result of your board decision, would therefore separately vote to deny the special permit relief and uphold the building commissioner. If, on the other hand, if your board were inclined to find that the activity should continue with additional continues, you would need to act first upon the special permit application. It would not be a special permit that would be issued in relation to the site. There is currently no special provision that would allow the subject activity within the BP district. The only way the activity could continue would be if the board determined to amend the special permit to remove and amend the condition as to the expiration. At the same time, if your board were inclined, you could insert whatever reasonable new conditions that would be part of the original special permit grant. If you do the foregoing, you would be in essence rendering the building decisions moot, and you would find in essence that the building commissioner was correct in his analysis. But because of your decision to allow relief in the form of the special permit amendment, the issues raised by the appeal of the building commissioner's decisions were moot. I provide the above to simply as a guide to your board and end up on either one of the spectrums. None of what I should be taken as an argument in either direction that the relief would be granted or denied. I have included with the file an appeals copies to the Buildings Commission's letter. If the board has any questions or things develop, let me know, and I can respond in writing. I'd be available at a later date. With that, I hope that answered a couple of the questions concerning the cease and desist, and then the options that are in front of this board as we speak. Anybody, would you like to comment, Joe, on the last question?
The question relative to the, you want to continue with the audience?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to continue first. Yes, sir. Please state your name and where you're from.
Ron Arpino, 51 Zane Circle. In relationship to what Jeff was talking about, the flow going down Route 16, and I understand you're taking care of some of it now, but before that, there was mud flow, rock flow, and dangerous to everybody out there coming out of there. We contacted the Milford police 3 times, and then the state police twice, and finally everybody must have got together and forced somebody to do something, because it is much better than it was, but we're still getting a river coming out of there whenever it's heavy rains. But that's not why I stood up here. I have here in my hands letters from various people in the development. We have pictures of damage in the area of different homes that has happened. And I think that that's what we're trying to address, not the fact of the zoning and not the fact of the permitting. We're effectively asking, what are we going to do about all the blasting that's destroying our homes down there? Okay. And that's the big problem that we're having right now. We're not talking about any of the rest of the stuff. All we're concerned mainly is we're getting...
seek remedy.
Yeah, how do we get this?
Damages.
Okay.
Blasting is what we're talking about.
All right, so we've already had 2 talking about the blasting and some issues that you're dealing with. Any other issues that we need to address before we answer those questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is, and my wife's also, and I'm sure a lot of people here at Zane Circle is the blasting. I understand it's a part of quarrying. I know they try to drill, blast, do it in tandem sometimes, but the problem I have is it just needs to be more controlled. Now, I think you brought it up yourself, something about the hours and stuff like that. We've got problems with the hours. I mean, sometimes, you know, there's work over there on Sunday mornings before 7 o'clock. I mean, there's no need for that. I mean, I don't care if somebody's got a ball game or what. I mean, before 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, I mean, there's no reason for that. I mean, if it's going to be Sunday operations, I mean, those rules have to be set in place so that we can at least call the police to have them come down if that's what it's going to require. You know what I mean? To have them cease operations on stuff like that. I don't have a problem with them. You know, I know, you know, these guys want to make a living too. We don't have a problem with that. But as for the blasting, the frustration with the blasting now is what's happening is before we used to have a little bit of lead time. You'd hear the sirens, and there'd be like 3 minutes between the sirens and the blast. Now it's like you hear the sirens, and sometimes it's like 30, 45, 50 minutes before you hear the blast. Now, the problem with the blasting is I'm right across the street at 433. So what happens is just over the course of the years, sometimes I'm out cutting the lawn or something, and I'll find stone chips on my lawn, right in the middle of my lawn. I mean, these are, you know, it's fly rock. That's what it's supposed to be called, fly rock. Now, a little while ago, it could have fallen off a truck. We never really did figure it out. I went down to the fire chief, but it was a piece of granite, like about this big. Now, it probably rolled off a truck, but we're still not 100% sure. He wasn't either, whether it was fly rock. Okay. So, I mean, this piece of granite probably weighed like a good 10 pounds anyway. It's a good 10-pound piece of rock, so. Okay. You know, I just think it just needs to be, more rules need to be set in place, that's all. It just needs to be more regulated. And as for the blasting, I mean, that needs to come down to like maybe 1 day a month or 2 days a month, and they have to be set days. Now, maybe it's more than 2 days a month, but they need to be set in place so that we know on certain days that's when the blasting's going to happen. I mean, preferably I'd like to have more drilling done, because I know they can do it with drills too, because we've heard that. But I think you brought it up yourself, Mr. Chairman, about the water trucks. That needs to be done in a controlled manner too, because there was one time last summer, I thought there was a fire. I looked out the window and it was like, wow, must be a huge brush fire going on. Turns out it was all concentrated right over at Milford Stone. My whole backyard was just, it looked like there was a fire going on because the dust was so, it was just like a pall. It was just hanging over everything. So, I mean, you know, if it's going to be done with the drills, I mean, there's got to be some water trucks over there too. No, just as part of regular operation.
Great.
So,
Thank you for your
those are my
comments.
concerns.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'll start with you since you haven't had an opportunity to speak yet.
My name is Teresa Benincasa. I live at 17 Zane. I want to echo everybody's comments about the blasting being horrible for us, not only the noise, but the damage to our property. But I also want to say that I think that Mr. Shea's record over the past several years has shown that he cannot control his employees, because I see him shaking his head about the early morning. But I've actually called the police at 6:30 in the morning because of blasting. And so kind of to see him shaking his head tells me that he really doesn't have control over what the contractors are doing at his site. And how are we to know that if this permit is granted, that these things are not going to continue to happen? So I'm concerned about the control that he has over his site. The fact that he hasn't been filing the correct paperwork is another indication of that. But mostly about the blasting, and I think I can echo everybody's concerns about that as a homeowner.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir.
I have one last question for Mr. Shea and his lawyer. And that is that I would like to understand, after you realize that you are tearing our homes apart, how could you be a good neighbor and in all good conscience want to continue blasting? We all know that rock shelf, the blasting tremors will travel for miles. I'm less than a quarter mile away. My house has been torn apart. I've already put $2,000 into repairs because the spackling and everything has fallen on my head. We've got gaps that big all the way to the wall. This is not normal settling. So my question is, as a neighbor, how can you seek to continue this action in a residential neighborhood?
Anybody else care to be heard? Yes.
I'm a little nervous. I'm Heidi Lawando. I own a home at 426 East Main Street, which is a much older homestead than some of these homes. It was built in the 1800s. So I don't understand this map, but we are basically, our home is right next to the driveway going up.
Right there.
Lawando.
Right there.
So we are around. It happens here and here. So we have similar settling issues, damage issues. We have not had much success. We talked to the fire department when it first happened, but this was a while ago. I'm concerned to hear about what future plans are, because I don't know what that means for us as far as being in these different zoning type issues. And I don't know if I have the right to ask, if I understood you, you had said that Mr. Shea had purchased residences. And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask which residences those are. Oh, Emma's? Emma's, so that's the property where it's all covered with stone. Because there had been conversation about other purchases being made, which made me less concerned when this happened 20 years ago, but now I'm concerned. So, but, okay, thank you.
Anybody else care to be heard? John?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say that I spoke to the fire chief, and earlier in this development or this process, they did have some issues, and they went forward to having a full detail on every time they go into blast. So they've taken some steps to, mitigate some of the problems with these. It seems like all the problems are with the blasting. I would just comment that if you did grant that special permit, have some conditions that would control the situation. Because I would assume that eventually that property is going to be developed anyways, and if they get a subdivision plan submitted, they can develop it and blast it by right.
Correct.
I mean, the ledge is going somewhere someday.
Comment with the blasting. First and foremost, the blaster that Mr. Shea has to his work is bonded and insured. That insurance, I believe, is in place for the purpose of covering damage to anybody's property that surrounds the area. And to the extent that there have been damages to anybody's property in the area, no, I don't believe that Mr. Shea has ever received written notice of that. If he does receive written notice of that, he will hand that to his to the blasting company and see what the response is. So there is a mechanism in place in any blasting activity, and Mr. Erickson has made an excellent point, and it's a point that I did not spend a lot of time on earlier in the presentation. But to the extent that Mr. Shea continues to develop this property as a subdivision, as a business park subdivision, which is his right, there will continue to be blasting, notwithstanding that, because he is going to build roads and he's going to set the land in situations so that he can build buildings and pads sites, much as Fortune Boulevard is. You brought that up earlier, Mr. Chairman. This is another part of developing the industrial tax base in the town of Milford. So we're going to be doing that one way or the other. And to the extent that there are issues with blasting now, I would welcome the opportunity for anybody to give us notice of the damage to their houses, and we will turn that over to our blasting company, our insurer, because they must, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, carry the appropriate certificates to cover damage to abutting properties, and that's what they're required to do.
If you don't mind me making a comment, we're and usually, you know, been down the road with a lot of blasting processes in the past. Do we know if any of these homes within the area had pre-blasting surveys completed or cameras in the basements or anything?
Don't know that, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask.
That's usually what the blasting companies do.
And I don't know how far out they've gone, again, because you have such a significant parcel of property here. There really isn't all that much that close to the spots, and I've been involved in the same sort of situations where a pre-blast survey is conducted of buildings. I don't know if any were done here, and again, I don't know what the specific requirements are, but I do know that the liability is deemed to be strict liability, and to the extent that one has damage after a blast, it's presumed to be because of the blast.
Well, I guess the comfort zone here would maybe there needs to be a mechanism in place to have these homes checked prior to blast, so that you've got something prior and then something after to be able to work with in cooperation with the neighbors that are there. I mean, that's just I would always assume, you know, based on my past experience with blasting, that usually that's what the blasting company does. They put a seismometer up on the corner of the foundation closest to the blast site, so we all know, you know, what that meter is reading, so that it really does determine if the vein or if that has actually traveled that far and how bad.
Can I comment on that, or no?
Go ahead.
Just briefly answer your question to the extent that I know. When the two men were in making our repairs, I would come home and they would tell me that when they blasted, new cracks would create in front of them. They had new repairs to make that happened just as they're blasting during the day. I'm not home during the day, so I didn't even know they were blasting on the site. I do know that we're on the same shelf. It runs right up that mountain. So the two guys that did the repairs to our home reported to me that when they blast, they see new cracks in the wall, new plaster fall.
My concern also is that it almost seems like everybody is kind of in agreement, including the attorney here, that there could be damage to our homes. And so I'm concerned that we're even considering giving a permit to someone and just say, you know, we'll pay to fix it. It's not okay to damage our homes even if we have to fix it. And the problem is also that, you know, that the damage that we see is not necessarily all the damage that's occurring. I mean, when you're living in a house and it's constantly shaking, you have to be concerned about long-term damage. You have to be concerned about the foundation, cracks that occur in the foundation, you know, your own property, your personal property that's in the house. So just because we might see some plaster fall and get that fixed doesn't necessarily mean that that's okay, and that, you know, we can just kind of wipe this under the rug. I mean, if we're all in agreement that there's damage to our homes and that the noise is also damaging to us personally, because it's a nuisance, I just don't think it's okay to just say fix it and pay for it.
I'd just also like to add, and you know, it's great that the insurance company will pay for the physical damage to our homes. I'd like to know who's going to address the physical damage to our children and to our pets. And young children directly across the street from them that are afraid to go out of their house.
That's what
How do we assess and measure and compensate the families for that?
I hate to hold in front of you, but before it used to be, and you probably remember yourself if you've been there for a little while, you'd hear the sirens, within 3 to 5 minutes, the blast would go off. Now, you're afraid to go out of your house because it's like,
It's very variable.
no idea.
you hear the sirens, and sometimes it's 40 minutes later.
Thank you, we did get that, we did get that.
It's important because it's, you know, you get fly rock, it's like, it's something else.
Yes.
My name is Priscilla Brickley, and I'm at 433 East Main Street. I know of a company that came in that did oversee our homes before Zane Circle went in, but nothing has been done in the meantime from then till now. And that's just what I'm concerned with. How has it changed from then?
Well,
to now?
and I think that's a couple of the questions. The operation was there prior to these homes being built as well. It continued to operate during the process. I'm a little surprised that there wasn't some mechanism put in place to have pre-blast surveys done, especially if supposedly there's a vein running down that area. So anything that we talk about, whether we decide tonight or continue, is the fact that I think that the neighbors would need to feel comfortable that, number one, pre-blast surveys, if any decisions are made to approve or amend, that these are going to be done by the blasting company for all aspects of people in that area. And then number two, a better definitive area of the blasting timeframes. And clearly there'll be no operations on weekends, including, with the exception of maintenance vehicles, but no vehicles working. Nothing on site has to get done on weekends. So, with that, I don't know, clearly what the board members are inclined to do. We have some concerns from neighbors. I'd like to hear from the applicant and how some of these issues are going to be addressed if things move forward, so that we can try and get this behind us.
Dave?
Last question.
One last thing.
And please don't repeat what's already been said.
No, all I'm saying is that, and I understand, and it's great that the insurance companies want to take care of all this damage, but some people have already taken care of the damage, so you have to go back and prove that now. But does that mean we're supposed to keep repeating this over and over and over again?
I think, and I believe, based on how they would handle it, an inspection would be done prior.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying it happens, we get blast, we get damage. 2 weeks later, they fix it, we come back, 3 weeks later, we get damage again. So we're supposed to keep repeating that process?
And again, I'm not a blasting expert at all, so I don't know the mechanism, whether the blast can be reduced, whether lower loads of dynamite go in, I don't know. I know it's been done, lower loads go, so it doesn't impact such a stronger blast. Go ahead, Mr. Antonellis.
It's my understanding, Mr. Chairman, and you brought this up earlier, that what you do is you set monitors at certain specific points. You set a blast off, and if there's a disruption over a certain amount of variation level, then the blast itself has to be reduced so that it doesn't transfer beyond that spot. I think it's a difficult science, but there is some science to it. And again, I think that I don't like to say this at these meetings because I do a lot of residential development also, but the residential development created a significant amount of blasting in the same neighborhood because it's on the exact same rock vein. And, land is going to be used. And it is going to be used for the purposes of moving society forward, supplying the products that society needs. And I do believe that there's an absolute obligation on behalf of the land user to comply with the regulations. And I can tell you that to the extent that this board imposes regulations on my client in an amended special permit, they will be followed. I've never had a situation where this board has acted unreasonably, and I don't believe that I've had a situation where a client has acted unreasonably after a reasonable outcome has occurred. Again, I don't want to repeat the issue of further development on the property, but the property was purchased for the purpose of developing it into an industrial park. Okay?
That's correct.
That is my client's goal. He has gone about it in a way that he believes is profitable for him, obviously because he can sell the dimensional stone, but it's being done in a way that was, again, allowed and under the special permit, and in a way that has made sense for the way in which the land can be restored. I recognize the issue. I also recognize that these issues need to be addressed, and again, to the extent that they can be addressed through reasonable and appropriate conditions, then we will do that. I would just want to say to the board in closing, on the day that Mr. Erickson came to the site for the purpose of providing the cease and desist order, Mr. Shea was in my office, and we were discussing the development of that property and the future subdivision of it and what needed to be done on that. And we got a telephone call from his worker that the cease and desist order had been issued, and I said, why? Because I was under the impression it was all IB, mistake on my part, but I wasn't involved in the beginning. I just thought it had been all rezoned IB a few years ago. And I think Mr. Erickson will tell you, I was kind of in shock when I found out that there was a special permit. I went back to Joe and kind of looked at me as if to say, and he mentioned a name which gentleman's no longer, he's deceased. So I don't want to talk about him in vain or anything like that, but it was, I thought Walter took care of that. And, you know, and again, we're here understanding that there's been a skipping of some procedural aspects, but we're here also, I think, with the applicant who recognizes his obligations, and I think to the extent that the board can place some reasonable controls on in a amended special permit, we can work this out, and I can make certain that pre-blast surveys are done and that they're done at appropriate times and at scheduled times during the day. Those are not, I mean, I don't want to have to say that it's just Wednesdays because there's a lot of work, but if you wanted to say it has to be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or between 12 and 2, I think those are the kinds of conditions we can live with in that regard.
Thank you, and I agree with you. Development just never seems to stop, whether it be this property, the property right next to it. If we stop this, someone else is going to come in, and if we don't, we need to control and protect the residents and give them the best mechanism so that they don't have any more issues. So from my perspective, I'm going to try and get some guidelines in there. And just as a suggestion, there's a homeowners association down there. I think after we anticipate what we're going to do, I'd like to go take a direction down that road with maybe that they need to meet with them. But saying that, if there's no other questions on the board, Brian?
I just have a few. The 2002 special permit clearly expired, possibly never in effect because it wasn't recorded. Are you confident that we even have authority to resurrect the special permit?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not familiar with 48 in terms of giving us that authority. Is there a case on that?
I think I think you have the ability to treat it any way you want. And I think that's the great thing about zoning. I think it's a court of equity in that you could fashion remedies under any and all circumstances relative to what you deem to be appropriate at the time. I think Mr. Moody has couched his opinion and is not advising you what to do, but I think that as I listened to what Mr. Consigli read, he's saying that in fact you could treat it nunc pro tunc, that you could take the position that we are here as though it was then, and that there has been a mutual mistake because on the side of the mutual mistake, the fire chief has continued to issue blasting permits. The town has continued to use the property. The town has worked with Mr. Shea on some issues about the control. So I think that everybody, and I use the word mutual mistake, has acted as though that special permit or the rights there have been in play. And again, I think that what you're doing today is to codify what might be a series of mutual mistakes and misunderstandings. And again, I think that your authority is very broad here. I think the question of your authority is viewed by the next level, but I think as it relates to what you do here today, I think you have the right to do it.
Assuming you're right that the front portion of the property is pre-existing non-conforming, if we deny the special permit or we don't choose to resurrect it when we sustain the building inspector's decision, could you not just continue operations but only in that portion of the property?
I would absolutely intend to do that. I would be, to the extent that I would then, I would take the position that that is a legal pre-existing use and always has been. And notwithstanding the fact that a special permit was granted, assuming arguendo that you're right, because if you make the determination that it's expired, then it expired in 2004. And in 2004, that was Industrial B. And in Industrial B zone, quarrying was allowed. You did not need a permit. Okay, you did not need a permit. And even the issue about earth removal doesn't affect it because, excuse me, quarrying as it relates to earth restoration, it's viewed differently about side stabilizations. A lot of your gravel regulations are in there to make certain that the earth that is being processed in gravel removal, and again, you're removing from the earth and those things, that those sidewalls are done in such a way so that you don't get sliding, you don't get avalanching, so to speak, of the dirt. Whereas with quarrying, it's considered to be a straight shot and the stone itself holds itself up. So again, that's why when you look at your zoning bylaw, it's simply P without any numbers. You know the numbers are for site plan review or for other conditions. It's straight P. So I would take the position that from assuming arguendo that your board finds, and I hope you don't, that there is no basis to come up with a modified special permit, then it is absolutely opposition that the activities in and within that portion of the land that was IB are pre-existing lawful activities.
Just one further thing. The chairman mentioned a couple possible conditions with respect to the blasting. I would just like to have the conversation now before we close the hearing, so we're not imposing conditions that are completely not workable. Some ideas of what types of blasting restrictions would work at the operation. The chairman mentioned Wednesdays only from 12 to 2, something along those lines.
I didn't mention it. Was
Somebody else did. I think the chairman actually said that might not be reasonable, and I'm saying that it is not reasonable. I do think that designating a time during the day is not unreasonable. So if one were to say that blasting shall occur between 12 and 2 o'clock, or if the blasting shall occur between 1 and 3, or 11 and 1, or 9 and 1, or 9 and 2, I think 2 or 3 hours is enough for they take the shots. Is that fair, Joe?
Control over it, really, because they come when they come. You know, sometimes the fire chief's there for, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Because
walking around checking everything.
Because the fire chief is
they
there.
don't spend a lot of time. I mean, they spend a lot of time beforehand because they want to see. These guys are all filling the holes.
Well,
so it's like
I do understand that there's an issue when it rains and that type of stuff too.
Because sometimes they could say we're going to blast in 20 minutes. They think, and they don't blast for an hour. But the fire department's there and they're double checking their lines, the holes, everything. So it's kind of.
But you could say that the time between the siren and the actual blast.
I get an answer for that.
Okay.
Some of those are small, really controlled blasts that you don't even hear. You know what I'm saying? That are totally mad at just getting a certain area. Some of those, because sometimes you do a blast, a deep blast, that you can feel it. And then we do another blast that you'll barely even hear. It'll be like, so they blow it, but then it's not a big blast. So, that you barely hear. I mean, you're in the back of the property, in the front of the property.
So when do they send the siren off?
2 minutes before the blast. So
Okay.
every time you hear that siren, they blast 2 minutes later. But sometimes we have small controlled blasts.
Okay, in the interim. Okay, that
so
would.
you don't hear it.
Okay.
So it's not a big thing. It's just a little, because everything has to be matted.
Is there an echo process when you're further away too?
Oh, yeah.
Like a
So
delayed echo?
if we can't hear it, how can we hear it a quarter of a mile away?
Well, that's what
All right.
What's shaking the house?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other question, Brian?
In terms of, again, times a day might work. Are there other frequencies that you could deal with, only on certain days per week or no more than once per day, something along those lines, so that folks aren't, at any time, they could have to hear blasting? Are there other restrictions you can live with? I just want to make sure that if we grant the special permit, we're not imposing restrictions you can't live with.
Is young children supposed to go hide in the basement and hear the siren go off?
I think if some of you came to our houses and were inside of them, you might think a little bit differently. I'm usually at work, but I live at 14 Zane, but when I was home sick a few months ago, I was beside myself. My house was shaking. My basement is all broken up, the cement is all broken, and my bathroom window, which is a triangular type window, is actually sideways now, and it has to be from this blasting.
Okay, let's do this. Maybe we go down the road with, we allow 3 days of blasting, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Is that something that the applicant can live with?
I don't really have control over it, but I guess I could try to tell them, can we blast between 10 and 2? And it won't be every week, it wouldn't be every week anyways. I mean, sometimes we blast, 4 blasts in a row within 3 days and then don't blast again for a month. It's not like we blast every week.
I have a procedural question for the board. They're currently non-compliant. There's no question about that. So does Mr. Shea leave this meeting knowing that he can go back to blasting and business is normal tomorrow? Or is the cease and desist upheld tomorrow?
It'll depend on how the board makes the decision today. This would be, if we make a decision tonight, it would be an amendment to the existing.
But they're currently non-compliant. You do agree with that?
That's correct, but they also have.
So his
as he
cease and
indicated-
desist is quite
As he
accurate.
indicated too, by right, they've already had it. So with that, any other comments? Because I'm going to close the hearing.
Yeah, I just have one question, Mr. Shea. Is this being, as your attorney has mentioned many times, a lot of this work is being done to develop an eventual industrial park, which at some point in time, I would expect the quarrying and the blasting will cease?
Correct.
I mean, do you have any rough estimate? I mean, is it a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
When the casino goes in.
Huh?
When the casino goes in and that's their main entrance.
All right, let's keep this, and forget the comments, please.
Yeah.
Let's keep this.
Any idea as to how?
7, 8 years we had talked about.
Yeah, 7 or 8 years, or, yeah,
All right. In other words,
Mr. Evans, to answer your question, the day that the cease and desist order came, when Joe was in my office, that's exactly what we were talking about. And we had projected out, looking at the amount to take off and the amount of work he wanted to put into it and the severity of what he does. We were looking at 5 to 7 years.
All right. Just an honest answer.
And again, we talked about, again, to answer, because I think it's a good question, we talked about doing it in stages, that we might put, so much roadway in, and then go on and get some tenants, and then go on a little bit deeper. But that would be the process that we were going. And a lot of, again, when Joe was giving you the explanation about moving the material it's to get the site open so that you can find out where the appropriate pad sites are going to be.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Shea, I'd like to ask you a question. Hearing the concerns of the residents and helping me make a decision, what do you feel, as the owner of the property and mining the areas, what do you feel can be done to alleviate some of these problems?
Most of the problems that I've heard have been to do with the drilling and blasting. And basically about 40% of the cost in drilling and blasting is their insurance and their permits. So I guess the pre-blast survey is the big thing that has to be done. And I don't know how many feet, and that's why, I don't have my blasting license. That's why the fire chief has to be there. All that stuff is, I don't know anything about it. So I just think that's why it costs so much to drill and blast, and that's why it's also monitored. So
we go with the pre-blast?
Yeah, they got to
Make them do it.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know how many feet they have to do it or anything. But the thing that's...
But I think what I'm looking at is more blasting pads doesn't alleviate the situation.
Well, the front of the property...
Burying more earth onto a blasting area, that doesn't alleviate the situation, correct?
No, but the front of the property will be done. I'm not sure whether it's going to be in 8 months or a year, and then all the blasting is just going to get further away from Zane Ridge. Right now, the front of the property, the access route coming into the site is, like I said, I've taken roughly a 50-foot cut out of about 5 acres, and also started work in the back area. No, over the other side, Joe. Yeah, all up front there. So that's going to...
all done.
Not all done, no. Right here, Joe, is where we've been blasting currently, getting the road. We're still 20 feet above Route 16.
Yep.
So this is all going to be done, and then we're going to get further away from Zane Ridge as time goes on. So this will be done. All I'm doing is spending money right now, preparing that.
Okay.
Does your insurance cover the decreased value in our home?
You have to address the board, okay?
I'd like to
And I
know.
think, as far as that question is concerned, that's the insurance process. We're gonna put a mechanism in place here, because I'd rather have a mechanism in place to try and correct the situation and control it with this particular applicant than to come down the road 2 years from now, have someone else there and freewheeling, and they still have the right to do it, to develop the site. So I think the more safety guides we try to put in now to protect these people, whether they be, every house gets pre-blast surveyed, and if there's issues, I want someone to be, I want the blasting company to be able to come in, meet with the homeowners, correct questions, and I don't care if the blasts have to be smaller or less, but we've got to correct the situation within the residential areas down there, especially if there's being damage created. That's the paramount situation, and I think everybody's trying to get to the same end result, and I think that's the focus that this board needs to move forward with, is to protect the neighbors, but also be able to work within the community of a development.
Is there any recourse for us, for the land to have no blasting whatsoever? I mean, is there anything that you guys can put in the, I don't know what it is, I don't know.
It's
Lawyers
under the
speak,
zoning, a developer has the right to develop his property with the proper permits. So if someone came in to put up 200,000 square feet of industrial space there, they would have to submit a plan with the planning board, and they can turn around and blast the site to whatever they're liking to be able to develop what they have, providing that they had the authorized permits under the zoning regulations of the town of Milford. Not necessarily, no. Absolutely not. They go to the planning board and they can fit whatever they want within the envelope of that site, and they can go ahead and get their permits and build. And they can blast.
But the planning board could deny that permit based on the fact that.
Not if they meet the entire criteria of what it's allowed for in use.
Correct.
So if they can fit a 150,000 square foot building on that 51 acre site, and they met all the guidelines under the planning rules and regulations, yes, that they can build on that site. It's tough to deny something like that, because it also brings in high tax dollars and tries to keep the commercial or the residential rate in check. That's why we have two different tax rates. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'm going to, yes, sir.
Richard Kerr, 26 if, when you put together your package, your proposal for the pre-blasting testing that may be done on our homes, could you include that to be either the shallow blasting as well as the deep blasting?
I think I'd like to have in there a meeting with the blasting company, with you people as a homeowners association.
My concern is...
There's guidelines that blasting companies have. I'm not an expert, so I cannot dictate to them how many pieces of dynamite they stick in how many holes, because that's not my forte.
I understand that, and I'm not arguing with you. I'm just concerned that they would try...
Trust me, sir, I'm not arguing with you.
My concern would be that they would try to do a lesser of a blast to cause less of a movement in our homes.
Right.
I'd like them to be able to do the same type of blasting that they're doing now, is causing the movement.
Well, I think what should happen is a seismometer should be set up in a couple of different locations prior to blasting, so that we can have an idea of the volume of that size of blast, so they can make a guidance as maybe to reduce that blast.
I second your suggestion, the blasting company meet with the condo association. It's an excellent idea.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close the hearing. You have the last word before we take it under
Chairman,
advisement.
my last word is simply I thank the board for their patience and consideration tonight, and we look forward to working with the board should the board find that the amended special permit is the appropriate remedy here. And again, I thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate hearing from your neighbors.
Close the meeting and take it under advisement.
Yes, and my neighbors.
Thank you.
Neighbors, thank you.
Okay, we are going to go back to the first applicant, and we'll start taking a look at that. Joe, is that, I need that plan.
Yeah.
Can I?
This plan.
But I need to sign. Okay, yeah, I need to sign that. Do you want a copy of it after I sign
Yeah,
it?
this one has all the notes on it, which is the one that I think was part of the thing. Some of the conditions that were in there that are listed up there. I know we're closed, I'm just pointing those out. Yes,
Okay.
if you would take that and just make, you can make a copy.
I'll sign it, okay.
At my expense.
Just remind me to send it.
Okay. As I understand it,
I'm not going to stay, because I have a very early flight out tomorrow. This is my son, who I haven't seen yet.
Good, go for you.
Have fun. Bye-bye.
All right, Joe, good luck. What was the first hearing?
How do we find out the decision?
We'll get you a copy. I'll make sure you guys have a copy. We're gonna try and work this through. All right, let's, Keith, on the application of Keith Monley, which was the special permit for the cars. Joe?
Okay, so he wants to put 15 cars?
15 cars,
Okay,
it's got to
and
go to
he's-
site plan.
Okay, and he's not doing anything with the,
Jiffy Lube.
yeah, the
No.
Jiffy Lube there. How's he gonna repair cars and stuff?
He's not repairing cars, only selling them.
Okay, but I mean, let's say he has a car there that he's gonna do some work on, is he gonna tow it somewhere?
No, well, no, we'll put in the condition,
Yeah.
no automotive repair on site.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we'll do
So we can't
no,
have more than 15 unregistered?
no automotive
That belong to him.
repair
There'll be Jiffy Lube cars there also.
on site with this applicant.
Yeah, now Jiffy Lube doesn't,
Right,
okay. Or not Jiffy Lube, it's Sprint Lube.
right. No automotive repair on site with the applicant. The license also runs with the applicant.
Right.
And provide planning board with proper site plan for display location.
So we're carving out the existing Sprint Lube operation from
Yeah.
prohibition on repairs.
No, yeah, it just says this, no automotive repairs on site with this particular applicant for car sales.
Okay.
Yeah, because they got 2 bays there, but I know it said Sprint Lube uses it, so I don't want this to be a,
Yeah, because we clearly don't want someone sitting outside repairing an automobile in the parking lot.
yeah.
Okay, so we basically have no parking lot repairs, no automotive repairs on site with the, with the applicant for the car sales. The license will run with the applicant, and of course, the planning board has to have to approve a site plan for display of vehicles. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. This goes in this one. Oh, we didn't. We have to sign this. Okay. All right, we also have the next one, which is,
279 Main Street.
Yeah, 2 Antonelli.
Foundation on Main Street.
Yep. Want to put approve as submitted?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. There's already a curb cut for the driveway.
Yeah,
I
with
mean, he's gotta
exception
put it on the-
with exception of the frontage. In the event he's got to take the foundation down, the frontage requirement variance stays in place. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Okay. May run out of paper on this one. Okay. All right, how would you like to address this? I've made a lot of notes. I think we clearly heard the neighbors and the residents' concerned. I think it's imperative that we set some additional conditions. Right here? Okay. So,
Now, he's had this business for 11 years.
correct.
I mean, have we heard any, I mean, just now they're having,
Well, and I guess, this is what I think we need to do. Let's go with the hours of operation. Let me tell you what we currently have. We currently have the hours of operation 8 to 5,
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday.
And I think that's certainly reasonable.
So that particular item is fine. The other one we had, anybody have any comments concerning the hours of operation?
Oh, John, doesn't it require a special permit from the police chief to work on Sunday? Other than, food services and those kind of things?
No, we're not going to do that.
Require a special permit, the only thing that might apply is the noise bylaw, which is within the jurisdiction of the police department, and I'm not sure what it is. Specifically on that.
All right, currently, this is what the amendment is. The hours of operation of the entire site should be limited from 8 AM through 5 PM, Monday through Friday. And then, of course, the second one is the specific sections concerning, relating to earth removal. That should stay. As far as this one here, as the special permit will expire in 24 months, clearly that was not the intention to begin with. So I would recommend that we keep the items that were currently there. However, we're going down, there'll be no operation on Saturdays or Sundays, with the exception of vehicle repair on Saturdays. So the operation does not operate on weekends. I get the process of being able to maintain trucks on Saturdays to get ramped up for Mondays. However, do you want to put hours of operation on Saturday for repairs? Or you want to kind of restrict that from like maybe 9 to 2?
I would say later in the morning for sure is better.
Saturday, we'll have
9 to 4 or something?
repair of vehicles.
I mean, how much noise does that generate?
Not operating.
I'm thinking if they gotta go there and do some, do they have any buildings on site
9
or
to 4.
anything?
No.
Nothing? 9 to 4?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to add in here,
We want to add something that they have to, at least I think ought to be that they or their attorneys have to meet with and the blasting company has to meet with the,
Yeah, but can we put that as a,
well, let's do this. Why don't we do the blasting timeframe? I think the blasting hours can occur daily, as he indicated, between 10 AM and 2 PM.
you think that's a big enough window?
That's what he told us.
Okay, I just,
Between 10 AM and 2 PM, Monday through Friday only.
I think that's too restrictive for the blasting, 4 hours. I mean, I'm just concerned, let's say they get it set up and they run over and it's 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how long it takes to, I
You want
don't
to do
know
10 to
anything
3?
about blasting.
Want to do 10 to 3?
Yeah, let's do 10 to 3.
At school buses, you could get kids running around at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 to 3 is good, right? No?
Well, you got transportation coming and going, you got school buses going on Route 16s.
Well, you had them going before for the last 11 years.
Right.
So,
All right, we'll go 10 to 3.
okay,
If they have to come back to amend, they can come back to amend.
yeah.
Okay, 5. I'm going to require, I'd like to require that all homes within the Zane Ridge development and
How long has that development been there?
8, 9 years?
6 years.
So they were in business before the homes?
Oh, long
Oh,
before.
yeah. Okay, we'll require all homes within the Zane Ridge development and Route 16 to Whispering Pine have pre-blast surveys?
Now, can
Wait a
we
minute.
say that? I mean, is there a certain?
It's a condition.
Okay, even though there's a certain, I mean, there's a certain radius, isn't, that you want, I mean, Zane Ridge goes, they go quite a ways back there,
Right.
I'm just thinking if
Well,
you're
we can go
talking
within a radius.
I mean, you could be talking quite a,
Route 16, within a reasonable, I'll put within a reasonable radius of blasting regs. How's
if
that?
someone else is gonna come forward and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm 5 houses up the road and you didn't do anything,
Right, okay.
and you went back there a half a mile or something.
All right, so we require all homes within the Zane Ridge, all homes within the Zane Ridge development and Route 16 within a radius of the blasting regulations of,
Is it federal blasting reg, I don't know if it's, they say,
federal regulations, federal law. All right, 6. Blasting company / insurance company shall meet with
Condo
the
Association of Zane Ridge.
Condo Association and the residents to discuss future work and current and past damage to their homes. Period. Number 7. The blasting company needs to set milestones to within a reasonable distance to place seismometers I'm going to put minimum of 3 locations to determine the size of the blast and adjust accordingly. So the blasting company get an idea of how large of that blast would create that vein and what it would do to carry through to create damage, if any. To monitor, I'd like to put in here number 8 too. To have a water truck on site to reduce dust period. And then put 9, I'm going to say,
But when you say have a water truck on site, is this
to
when?
reduce the...
All the
to
time?
reduce-
Okay.
or when needed. To have a water truck on site when needed to control,
And how will they know when it's needed? I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know anything about blasting.
you see a
but-
blasting, you see
Okay,
billows of smoke coming up, I think they need to use the water.
okay, but I mean, are they gonna
Well,
have?
they can be dust without the blasting.
They can be dust without the blasting, but I'm
Okay.
talking about huge,
When they're
huge
doing the
volumes.
drilling and everything
Okay.
else and the moving of the earth.
Okay.
The last one was...
John, do you know who the blasting company is?
I do not.
It's usually name drilling and blasting.
Huh?
It's usually name drilling and blasting based on 140 and Milford.
I'd like to have the owner's engineer look at Route 16 filtration, look at the Route 16 water runoff.
Planning opportunities,
Um,
next few days.
Yeah, have the owner's engineer look at Route 16 water runoff and come up with a mechanism to keep it under control. Okay, any other ideas, comments, restrictions? I think we do.
We don't have anything in there in regards to seismic monitoring.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did, I put it in there.
Okay.
And they have three of them.
I said, needs to put some seismic monitoring,
In at least three locations.
within 3 locations to determine the size of the blast and adjust it accordingly.
When do these conditions take effect?
Well, they're currently running on this, good question, but I'll have to check with Jerry Moody. I don't think there's appeal period here, but I believe that this takes effect right away because they're currently under a normal operation anyway. So with that, I'll need a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Vote is unanimous. Where's the sheet on that?
Probably. Our next meeting is in July. Our next meeting is in July, and the second Tuesday, I think, is like the 10th or something.
There it is. With that, I take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous? Thank you for joining us, and have a good night.